This episode of the HoopsHype Podcast is brought to you by the Big Three. Ice Cube's Big Three is back for Season 2. For those of you who don't know, the Big Three is a professional 3-on-3 basketball league featuring former NBA stars like Amari Stoudemire, Nate Robinson, Chauncey Billups, Baron Davis, Carlos Boozer, Mike Bibby, Meta World Peace, and many, many more. The list goes on and on. Get your tickets for games at big3.com/tickets. That's big3.com/tickets, or tune in live every Friday night on Fox or FS1. That's right, this year the games are going to be on live, not tape delay. Big Three, we're changing the game. Welcome to another episode of the HoopsHype Podcast. My name is Alex Kennedy. Joining me today is someone that doesn't really need an introduction, but I want to run through his amazing resume anyway. He's a future Hall of Famer, 5-time NBA champion, 18-time All-Star. He scored the third most points in NBA history. He was the NBA's most valuable player in 2008, has 2 NBA Finals MVP awards. Kobe Bryant is joining me, one of the greatest professional athletes of all time. He's now continuing to thrive in retirement as well. He decided his trophy case wasn't already full enough, so he won a freaking Oscar earlier this year for his outstanding animated short Dear Basketball. In addition to winning an Academy Award, he now has a terrific TV show on ESPN Plus called Detail. He also has a book coming out on October 23rd called The Mamba Mentality: How I Play. He has a ton of other books and projects in the pipeline as well through his various companies, Kobe Inc., Granity Studios, and Bryant Stibel Investments. Without further ado, let's welcome in the legend. Kobe, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I have a lot of questions for you, so let's just jump right in. So many young players in the NBA today grew up idolizing you and pretending to be you in the park. Some even say you're the reason they fell in love with the game. What does it mean to you that you've had such a big impact on this generation of NBA players?
It means a lot. I mean, it's not something that you think of when you're playing, but as you get older, you become a little bit more conscious about that sort of stuff, where you start looking at the next generation and how you can help in some kind of way. And so to hear that from some of the players that are playing today means a lot, man, because it's at some point it has to become about something more than winning championships, right? It has to become about the next generation and how you help give back to the game.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so many guys that say that kind of stuff about you. You're known for your intense work ethic, and there's so many epic stories about your training. Over the years, which players have impressed you the most with their work ethic and their ability to keep up with you?
I think you see a lot of players that are playing today have that work ethic. Kyrie, James, Russell. I mean, these guys really get in the gym and spend a lot of time in there. KD, LeBron, obviously, something that they do over a period of time. Like, you can be, like for young players out there, for example, it's not good enough to go out there and work really, really hard for like 2 months, like really, really hard. It's more important to work really hard over the course of 10 years
right.
and be consistent about that. And you have players that are out there today that have certainly done that.
Definitely. I used to love talking to rookies after their first game against you because they'd always have this stunned/starstruck look. When you were playing a young guy, how often could you visibly see how scared or intimidated they were?
No, I could tell. I could tell. From playing for so many years, you can kind of, sense that sort of stuff. you can feel that nervous energy off of them,
Was there ever a certain player or like specific instance that stands out just because they were so terrified?
Let me see. Well, we had a player in training camp actually named Jellabald, who was a young player. He's been in the league though, but he came to our camp and he was, I could tell he was nervous. We had a little altercation when he was in Seattle. And now he was in training camp and he's face to face with me every day, and he knew I wasn't going to forget any of that stuff, right? So I could tell he was really, 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 really nervous. And I made it a point to make his training camp absolute hell.
Oh, that's great. You had your retirement tour and the storybook ending with 60 points, but executives often approach retired stars to see if there's any chance they'll make a comeback. We heard about Reggie Miller getting a call from the 2008 Celtics, for example, after he had been out of the NBA for 2 years. Have any teams tried calling you and tried luring you out of retirement?
No, not seriously. Like I've known Bob Myers, the GM over at Golden State, forever. I mean, like, I remember the day he was going to go take his bar, and like we used to hang together all the time. So, my last All-Star game, we had a chance to kind of catch up there. We were staying at the same hotel, and I got a chance to tell him congratulations on everything, whatever. And he said, "Hey, listen, if there's any chance, you want to, change your mind and come back and play another year, man, you always come over here, that sort of stuff." But just all tongue in cheek, man.
Gotcha. There are people who spend their whole life trying to win an Oscar. You had an all-time great NBA career and then won an Academy Award shortly after you retired, like it was no big deal, which is incredible. We've seen what you can do when you lock in on something. So I'm curious, what are some other goals that you've set for yourself?
Well, the goal for us here at the studio is always the same. It's always quality above quantity, and it's about quality over all cost. And that's our focus every day. We have novels that'll be coming out here in March of 19. The Detail Show, we're working on extending that franchise into other sports. We have a really great children's podcast that'll be coming out in late August. And so we're really hard at work to try to create content for kids and for families that's going to inspire them and also educate them to certain extents.
Yeah,
we're just insanely focused on that.
Definitely. I'm excited to see that the Detail series will be extended, because that was one of my questions for you. That's a great series, and I think every fan base from every sport can enjoy that. So that's very cool. Do you have any interest in playing at Ice Cube's Big 3 League at some point? I know I have to ask for the fans that want to see you back on the court.
No.
No interest? All right.
No. No. And Cube is a good friend, man. He's asked me repeatedly, but the answer is always going to be no.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're focused on other stuff. This is a big offseason for the Lakers, obviously. Rob Pelinka was your agent, and many people may not know this, but also, godfather to one of your daughters. I know you've said that the Lakers are such a storied franchise that they don't necessarily need your help recruiting, but your voice and presence are certainly impactful. If Rob and Magic ask, would you be willing to attend a free agent pitch meeting to help the Lakers this summer?
Well, no. No, I'll call. I mean, I'm not going to be in the meeting. And listen, I'm not a part of the organization in any kind of professional way. Right. And so, for the players themselves, like the players have questions, or if they want me to reach out and call a player or something like that and talk to the player, or kind of give my 2 cents on what it was like to play here in this market, I'll certainly do that. But in terms of being a part of the meeting in any official way, the answer is no. I mean, but like I said, Rob and Magic both have great flexibility in their cap. They have great young talent. And, I've known Rob a really long time, man. This dude is as smart as they come, man. So he'll figure it out.
Yeah, we've seen Tom Brady in pitch meetings, so I had to ask. I mean, crazier things have happened. So I was just curious.
Well, Tom's still playing for the Pats, though. So.
True. Yeah, it makes sense. I totally see where you're coming from. But because you know what it's like to win championships and be beloved in LA, you have a unique ability to put yourself in, the shoes of someone like LeBron or Paul George. Why should they sign with the Lakers?
Well, I mean, from a basketball standpoint, you have to make decisions on the organization. And who do you feel is going to put you in the best possible position to win championships, right? I mean, that's always the number one thing. It's not the glitz and the glamour or the market, right? It's about winning championships. And you have to look at the management. You have to look at, are they capable of making sound decisions that are going to put me in a position here to win championships? And I say that with an S at the end of it.
Yeah.
And your decision has to be based on that largely. I mean, it's always about winning, man. It always comes down to that.
Every year there are players.
And the truth is, I mean, if you want to be beloved in LA, man, if you want to be beloved in LA, win championships.
Yeah,
that's it. I mean, you can be the greatest guy in the world, man. If you don't hang banners here in LA, then you'll just be a good guy. Then you'll be forgotten, the next year or whenever you retire. You want to be beloved here, man. You got to win.
That's a great point. Yeah, you guys don't hang divisional banners, just championship banners. Every year there are players who express their desire to train with you during the offseason. Are there any players you're planning to work out with this summer?
Yeah, I've gotten several calls already trying to work them into the schedule, and get him out to OC and work out with him for a little bit. So I've got about a handful of requests in so far.
The cool thing about detail is that you can basically help these guys from afar too, since it's so in depth and full of gems. You know, you don't need to even work out with them in some cases. So that's cool. You obviously spent your whole career with the Lakers, but there were a few times there when your future in LA seemed a bit up in the air. During those somewhat uncertain times, were there players who were persistent recruiters that were trying to get you to, you know, team up with them elsewhere to try to steal you away from LA?
No, see, when I was coming up on free agency, that was before all this super team stuff.
Right.
So that wasn't a thought process any of us had. You know, it was more so looking at the organizations that are there and looking at management and, you know, trying to make the best possible decision of where I want to continue the rest of my career. So that was before all of this super team stuff. So I didn't have that.
Yeah, the recruiting's pretty new. You're having so much success away from basketball, obviously, since retiring, but do you ever think you'll return to the NBA either as an executive, a coach, broadcaster, owner? Do any of those roles interest you?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, you know, look, I love what I'm doing right now. Like, yeah. I love coming to the office every day, coming to the studio and writing and editing and building and assembling creatives and giving them the freedom to create. Like, I love everything that I'm doing. And so no.
Well, you're crushing it. I mean, it's working out for you, obviously. Just a few questions from listeners. Count the Rings, who's clearly a huge Kobe fan, asked, you studied Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do. You took tap dancing lessons. You studied sharks and cheetahs and how they hunt their prey and applied those things to basketball. What are some other unique or unconventional things that you've studied or tried as you tried to hone your craft?
Well, I called John Williams in 2008 and talked to John Williams about how he conducts his orchestras. And, cause if you think about it, it's such a difficult thing to do. You have so many instruments, you have the different sections, you have the winds, you have percussion, right? You have the horns, you know, and all sorts of stuff. And, you know, he has to lead that to be able to create one harmonious sound. So how do you do that? So I sat down with him just to pick his brain a little bit. Because I felt like there was a lot of similarities between what he does and what I have to do on the basketball court. And what he said to me was fascinating. He says, Kobe, if I hear something is off, I can just interject the answer and give them the answer. But I found it's better to ask them questions, because most of the time the answer that I'll get back will be a better answer than the one I had. And that really helped me from a leadership standpoint of how I handled the guys going forward. And this is coming off of our loss to the Celtics. And so I changed my approach coming into training camp the next season just off of how John Williams conducts his orchestras.
Wow, that's so interesting. Another huge fan of yours, Luca Brasi, asks, which player gave you the toughest time in a game of one-on-one? We know you're a one-on-one legend. Who gave you the toughest game?
Let's see. I haven't really played one-on-one against any of the players that are not teammates, because I don't really run into them in the summertime too much. So, I don't know. I mean, I really didn't have too tough of a matchup with most players.
That makes sense.
Like I said, I mean, most of them are my teammates, man. So I didn't have too much of a problem with them.
Right, that's fair. John D. Niles asks, what are the pros and cons of being someone who's obsessively hardworking and competitive? What advice would you give others who benefit/suffer from the same mentality?
Yeah, take the good with the bad. It's hard because you're always working, you're always fine-tuning things. You never believe anything is as it should be. You want to continue to rework things, and it's sometimes I call it a disease or a curse. It's an affliction or something like that. But you know, it's you know, that's what we've been blessed with. You know, and I found it's much better to just embrace it and to try to work and create things that hopefully can help the person next year. And so to use that focus for something that is not simply individual in nature, but something that can reward people at large, I found is the best way to, is the best form of therapy for that, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a great answer. During your conversation with Shaq, there were so many interesting things, but you confirmed that you were 100% ready to be traded to the Chicago Bulls in 2007, to the point that you were looking at houses and schools. If that trade had happened, that changes NBA history, obviously. Do you ever wonder how much that would have changed your career, or, I mean, just your life in general, if that transaction actually happens and goes through?
No, because me, like once I've made that decision, I don't really go back and think about the what ifs. But if, to think about it right now, yeah, I mean, it would have changed things a lot. I believe we would have won championships in Chicago. I mean, that's what I think. But I feel everything happens for a reason. I mean, the biggest shock to me was that Shaq didn't know that. I mean, that was,
yeah,
that was the biggest surprise to me, that he was unaware of that.
He didn't see that video.
I think no, I mean, he didn't know. I think if he had known how serious I was about going someplace else, he never would have demanded a trade.
Right.
Which then, it's basically stopped me from going to any other place, because there's no way Jerry Buss was going to lose me and Shaq in the same summer. So if he had known how serious I was about leaving, I don't think he ever would have demanded a trade.
So that's the real way it affected NBA history, because you guys probably would have stayed together potentially. If that happens, do you ever think about that too? That kind of hypothetical. If we go through it now, you and Shaq never break up, are we talking about you guys as the greatest team of all time? Because the argument is already there. You could make the argument already.
Well, look, I'll take that 0-1 team that we had against anybody in the history of the game, any team. But, I will say, in terms of our run, I think it was going to come to an end. I think Shaq was just having health issues that would have prohibited us from going on these big runs, right? And you think about his body, you think about the size of this man, his agility. At some point, it starts chipping away, whether it's the toe injury, knee injury, these things start chipping away. So although it's fun to say if they stayed together another 3-4 years, what it would have been, the reality is that health would have really prohibited us or limited us from having that huge run. I mean, it was already affecting us in those last 2 seasons we had together in terms of his health.
Right. No, you're right about that. We got a lot of questions about the Lakers' young core. What are your thoughts on, the guys like Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram and Kyle Kuzma?
I like them. I think it's really early right now with young players. It's really tough to tell what's going to be what. But the most important thing is the question to ask is, do they have the commitment to be in the gym all summer long, all day long, right? Or will they be pulled in a myriad of directions from sponsorships, from the limelight and things like that, right? Things that can kind of pull you in different directions, distractions of social media and all this stuff. Are they able to edit the noise and focus on what really matters, which is their craft? And the players that can do that are the players that will wind up reaching their full potential.
Brandon Ingram mentioned, wanting to work out with you this summer. Is he one of the guys that you're going to be working with potentially?
He and I have talked about it. I haven't heard from him yet, but I know that's something he wants to do. So we'll see.
Okay, and you've become a mentor even off the court for so many of these guys. Kyrie, for example, talked about how he was calling you often, whenever he was waiting for Cleveland to trade him. How many players reach out to you like that? And are there any guys that you're, currently mentoring right now? Yeah, I mean, the mentorship continues. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. It's almost like a big brother type of thing. They know I've been in the league for so long. I've seen so many things. There's hardly any scenario that they can throw at me that I either haven't been through myself or have had teammates or other friends, peers go through a similar situation. So I get calls a lot, man. And it's not just in basketball and NBA, it's across sports as well. And it's fun to play that role, man. I enjoy it. I want to ask how an episode of Detail comes together, because it's such a great show, not only for fellow players, as you mentioned, that was kind of the audience that you're pitching it towards, but for super diehard fans. You obviously have to watch a ton of basketball. How do you find, how do you pick a player, and then what's the process of finding clips to analyze for that player?
Well, I generally pick a player who I believe is going to have some serious challenges in the upcoming game or that series. And I'll generally do the detail episode on that player. I didn't want to do a show that is highlighting things that have been done well. Or I don't want to highlight games where a player goes off of 45 points and show all the good stuff that he did to score 45 points, because that's not how I watched film. If I had a game where I had 60 points, I'm not looking at the things that I did right. I'm trying to find every little thing that I did wrong and looking at the issues I'm going to have in dealing with the Celtics defense and how I could potentially solve that problem. So that's what the detail series is. Now, in terms of how it comes together, we sit and we watch the game, and we'll pull the clips. And then once we pull the clips, I go into a room here in the studio, and we put the clips up on a laptop. I have a microphone in front of me. I hit the play button, and then what you see on the show is me recording it in real time. There's no pre-written script. There's no thought process of what I'm going to say. Like, what you see on the show is me watching it for the first time right then and there. Just like I was breaking down film when I was playing back in the day. That's the experience that you're getting.
Yeah, that's very cool. And can you give us a preview of what's going to be in the Mamba Mentality, How I Play, your book in October?
Yeah, the book is actually split up into two sections. It's there's process and then there's craft. And so I dive deep into the details of the process of getting ready to be able to play, from physical therapy to conditioning to injury prevention and all that stuff. Then get into the craft, right? The details of things, the nuances of moves, of drop steps, of timing, of reading defenses, and all that good stuff. So, it's a book for basketball nerds. It's a book for basketball specifics. And, just like I say on detail, man, this show is not for, it's not meant for entertainment.
Yeah.
It's meant for basketball purists.
Not for the casual fan. It's for the diehards that listen to this podcast and love basketball, and love all the little nerdy details, like you're saying. I love it.
Right.
And last question for you here. You're obviously regarded as a genius on and off the court. Who were some of your inspirations, not only in basketball, but just people in life that have inspired you, other geniuses that you either, have a relationship with, have gotten advice from, or that you just look up to from afar?
Well, thank you. Me and genius, I don't see that thing going hand in hand, but I appreciate that. I had a lot of role models growing up, a lot of people that I drew inspiration from, and they go across industries. I mean, like I said earlier, reaching out to John Williams was, he was one of my muses growing up. And obviously the usual suspects of Magic, Michael Bird, Bill Russell, Jerry West, Kareem, Olajuwon, but also going into Oprah, Shonda Rhimes, Johnny Ives, Tim Cook, Bob Iger, Mark Parker. These are all people that I look up to and have mentored me in one form or another, and continue to do so.
Great list. That's a fantastic list. Kobe, I know you're a very busy guy, so thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
No, you're very welcome, man. And, congratulations on the show, man. Good luck with it.
Thank you so much, and keep doing great work with the studio, and everything you're putting out's been incredible, so keep up the fantastic work.
Appreciate it, man.
Make sure you're all watching Detail, which is Kobe's show on ESPN+. It's so in-depth that Kobe's even said it's really just meant for fellow players and super diehard NBA fans, which is basically HoopsHype's audience, so I feel like you guys will like it. In each episode, he puts himself in a different player's shoes and goes through game film, saying how he would attack the opponent if he were that player, and he offers different tips and advice to that player. The guys who've been featured in the show have raved about it, and some even implemented some of Kobe's suggestions in the middle of the postseason. Jason Tatum, for example, said he watched his episode 25 times, and then he immediately altered his footwork a bit during the playoffs, following a tip that Kobe gave him in his episode. So if you watch Detail, you're going to learn so much about the game. It's also just really interesting to see the game through the eyes of one of the greatest players to ever pick up a basketball. And be sure to pre-order Kobe's book, The Mamba Mentality, How I Play, as well. That hits stores in late October. I'm sure that's going to be full of gems that are going to make you a better player or a smarter fan as well. And if you want to listen to more episodes of the HoopsHype Podcast, including last week's episode with Hall of Famer Dominique Wilkins, be sure to check us out on iTunes, Audio Boom, Stitcher, everywhere your favorite podcast can be found. Also, keep checking HoopsHype.com for the latest offseason news and rumors as the draft and free agency approaches. Until next time, thanks for listening.